Welcome to the 2026 Notice of Funding Opportunity Workshop, otherwise known as the NOFO Workshop. My name is Linda Thompson, and I am the Executive Consultant for Georgia Serves. I was previously the Executive Director from 2014 to 2024. However, I recently retired but decided to work part-time as their consultant. In this capacity, I assist the staff in various ways, one of which is to provide technical assistance to new applicants. So let me tell you just a little bit about Georgia Serves, the Commission. Georgia Serves is the pass-through agency for AmeriCorps funding in Georgia. This is our mission. We serve as a catalyst to address critical needs in Georgia by working with both AmeriCorps and our community partners. We create opportunities by offering grant competitions such as this one. We support those organizations both during the application phase and after they become subgrantees by providing technical assistance and training. We monitor those subgrantees to maintain compliance and to assist them in becoming successful in the implementation of their projects and in serving Georgia's communities for the greater good. We help to ensure that these federal dollars are managed well and that they are positively impactful in Georgia's communities and neighborhoods. The Georgia Commission for Service and Volunteerism was established in 1994 and was placed in the Department of Community Affairs, where it remains today, and it was placed there by executive order. Our legal name remains the Georgia Commission for Service and Volunteerism, but we shortened it to Georgia Serves in 2020 so that we could have a stronger presence in the community, and it could actually resonate in the community what we actually do, and that is serve Georgia. There are currently 4 full-time staff working for Georgia Serves, as the executive director position is currently vacant. And on an average, they receive between $5.5 million in funds in AmeriCorps grant allocations each year, and they oversee on an average 19 to 20 programs. So a little bit about AmeriCorps. AmeriCorps, also known as the National Commission for Service and Volunteerism, is the federal granting agency. They changed their name shortened it to AmeriCorps as their working name to better describe what they do. They provide opportunities for Americans of all backgrounds to serve and to address our nation's most pressing needs. Their mission is to improve lives, strengthen communities, and foster civic engagement through service and volunteerism. So before you get started on your application, there are a few things that you must do. All applicants must register with the System for Award Managing, otherwise known as SAM, at www.sam.gov. When we receive your application, we will check SAM to make sure that you are registered and to make sure that your registration is not expiring soon. So even if you are already registered, go ahead and check to make sure that your registration will not be expiring before we can get these applications sent to AmeriCorps. The second thing is that all applicants must include a valid UEI, a unique entity identifier, on the face sheet of their application. So go ahead and gather that number now. You have to get that number from your employer. We will not know what that number is, as your employer should have obtained that number when they applied through DUNS. And the third thing is that you need to go ahead, if you don't have one already, go ahead and establish an eGrants account by clicking on the URL that I provided here. So let's talk about who's eligible. Nonprofit organizations, Indian tribes, local governments, including school districts, and educational institutions, which can also be institutions of higher learning. Who does not qualify and who is ineligible to be an applicant are organizations that have violated federal criminal statute, organizations that propose activities that are not allowed under AmeriCorps laws, rules, or terms and conditions, organizations having any unpaid federal taxes that are not being paid through an agreement with the relevant tax authority, organizations described in the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as those that focus on lobbying. So for this training, we will only discuss two types of grants: operational or formula grants and planning grants. When the decision is made to allocate grant funds to states, a population-based formula is used to determine the amount of that allocation, and that's where we got the name formula. So that's why we call them formula grants, because it's a population-based formula that determines the amount of money that each state will receive. And so when we use the term formula or operational grant, we are talking about the same thing. Those two terms are interchangeable. For those of you who may not have a clear picture of how AmeriCorps works, this is how it works in a nutshell. AmeriCorps provides funds to state commissions, such as Georgia Serves, and eligible applicants apply to Georgia Serves for X number of AmeriCorps members. If awarded, those organizations recruit people to serve who will be known as AmeriCorps members, and those AmeriCorps members will provide direct service to constituents to move their program's project forward. For example, an organization may feel that a tutoring program will help children who are at risk of failure to succeed in school. They may recruit, say, 5 people to become AmeriCorps members to tutor children during or after school. Those AmeriCorps members must only tutor the children. They cannot perform functions of an employee or a teacher. They can only provide the direct service of tutoring to the children. That's what we mean by direct service. The organizations are in charge of recruiting their own AmeriCorps members. The Commission do not provide AmeriCorps members, so they will recruit people from their own communities or neighborhoods or whatever method they choose to use, but they will do their own recruiting. The Commission does not recruit or supervise the members that you recruit. The Commission oversees the organization that it funds, and the organization oversees their members, and the members provide direct services to their constituents. So oftentimes we'll use some of our formula funds for new applicants who may not be in a position or a good position to oversee a full AmeriCorps program right away. They may need some time to learn more about the concept of AmeriCorps, or they may know about AmeriCorps but need more time to plan. In other words, they just may not be ready for a full-blown AmeriCorps grant with AmeriCorps members. So in these instances, we may consider providing that organization a planning grant for up to $75,000. So during this presentation, I'll talk about both an operational grant and the opportunity to apply for planning grants. This slide shows you the components of a complete application. These components are the face sheet, the narrative sections, which include the executive summary, program design, organizational capability, cost effectiveness and budget adequacy, and the evaluation plan summary. The evaluation plan summary won't be applicable to most of you because evaluation plans are for those who have been in the who have been receiving AmeriCorps funds for 3 years or more. The application will also consist of performance measures, logic model, the 424 budget form, any continuation changes if applicable. If you are a grant that's in a continuation phase, then you should follow those continuation instructions. Clarification is only used if we ask you for clarifications, and you would respond in that section. And then, of course, once you complete your application, you must authorize it and agree to the assurances and certifications. These are the specifications of the some other specifications of the grant requirements, application requirements. The applications must not exceed 11 pages, double spaced. Now, I would suggest that once you populate eGrants with your application, that you print it off before you submit it to us to make sure that it does not go over 11 pages. The application pages, sections that count toward the page limits include the phase sheet, the executive summary, program design, organizational capability, and cost effectiveness and budget adequacy narratives. They do not include the evaluation, clarification, continuation changes, budget, or any additional documents. Also, the cost per MSY is $25,000, and I will explain what MSY means in just a few minutes here. The minimum living allowance for full-time members is $20,400. The logic model may not exceed 8 pages when printed off. So you need to review that also before you submit it. And applicants, please be aware that when you put your application in eGrants, it does not recognize special formatted characters. So we ask that you capitalize all of the headings to make it easy for the reviewers to tell the difference between the sections, because sometimes eGrants will push all of your paragraphs together, and it's hard for the reviewers who are volunteering to read your application. It's hard for them, it makes it difficult for them to tell where one section ends and another one begins. So to make it easier for the reviewers, I'm asking you to please make all of the headings in all caps. So to give you some idea of the timeline, the application deadline is February the 27th, 2026 at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There are no exceptions. Therefore, I recommend that you start on your application early, and if at all possible, to submit it early before the due date. It must be submitted via eGrants. We will not accept any paper copies or hand-delivered copies or email attachments. It has to be via eGrants, which is another reason to submit it early, because sometimes eGrants proves to be fickle. And if you have issues with eGrants, if you plan on submitting early, this will give you a chance to contact the eGrants help desk and to try to get technical assistance if you need it. Otherwise, I would hate for eGrants to be the reason why you're not allowed to submit an application. The application does include all additional documents, and additional documents are sent via emails, and I will give you that email address. But I do strongly encourage you to try to plan on submitting early. The funding recommendation notification. The board will vote on all applications that they recommend. So the applications will be sent to reviewers, and we will give those reviewers roughly 30 days or so to review the applications, and then the board will meet sometime in May and will vote on the recommendations as put before them by the review committee. For those applications that are recommended for funding, we will contact you and let you know that your application is recommended for funding, and then we will proceed to send it to AmeriCorps in Washington, D.C. to make the actual award. If your application is not recommended for funding, we will still contact you and we'll try to give you meaningful feedback as to why your application was not recommended for funding so that you can improve any future applications. We do plan to submit these recommendations to AmeriCorps sometime in May, no later than the end of June. So like I say, you will be contacted either way. If we need, or if the reviewers need clarification or have questions about your application, we will need to contact you. So make sure that the information that you place on your face sheet is information to a person that we can contact and talk to about your application. And AmeriCorps does plan to issue those awards at least by mid to late August of 2026. This is a list of the additional documents that you must submit, and as I promised you, here is the email address that you will use when submitting those additional documents. It is AmeriCorps@dca.ga.gov. And there are some rules for your email. In the subject line, please use the legal name of your organization along with the application ID number that eGrants will provide to you. In the body, please use the legal name of the applicant, a point of contact. If there's more than one point of contact, if you have an alternate, please provide us that as well. List all of the documents that you're sending to us. And if the documents are too large for one email, please use some kind of rule to let us know that. In the subject line, you can put 1 of 3 and so forth and so on. Again, the deadline for the additional documents is the same as the deadline for the application, which is February 27th, 2026, no later than 3 p.m. This is a list of the additional documents that you will need to send. Evaluation briefs, if applicable. Again, that will not apply to everyone because evaluations mostly pertain to our folks that's been in our portfolio for 3 years plus. Labor union concurrence, if applicable. Financial statement and our most recent audit. This is for everybody. Documentation verifying your federally approved indirect cost rate if you have one. If you don't have one, no worries. If you plan to partner with others, such as other sites or other organizations, we will need a memorandum of agreement or a memorandum of understanding showing that they are on board with partnering with you. You may also obtain those if needed for in-kind funding if promised to you, or cash funding for that matter. Logic model. If the eGrants cuts off a portion of your logic model, you may send that as an additional document. Now, these are 2 active links down here, Operational and Financial Management Survey form and the Immigration Affidavit. Both of those are active links. You can click on those. Now, the OFMS is typically a survey that AmeriCorps requires and is done online, but their website is down right now. And so what you'll find here when you click on that link is a PDF. You can complete that form and send it to us as one of your additional documents. If AmeriCorps requires that you complete the online version of it later on, we will let you know. The Immigration Affidavit also is another form that you'll find there as a PDF. You must complete that and send that to us as an additional document. So while you are waiting to hear from us after February 27th, just to give you an idea, these are some things that are going to be going on in the background. All right. Your applications will be sent to the reviewers on or after February 27th. We give them roughly 30 days plus to review them. If they have any questions or anything, we will try to contact you with the contact information that you're providing to us on that face sheet. You will hear from us as to whether or not you're funded at least by May 31st. We will send an award letter if you are awarded, if you are recommended for an award. And if you are not recommended for an award, you'll get a letter explaining why your application did not score high enough. Then we'll send those to AmeriCorps to make the awards sometime in June. And while we're waiting on those awards to be made, you will receive correspondence from us, probably in the form of an email, asking you who's going to sign the grant agreement. You will have to sign a grant agreement. This will be an agreement between you, between your organization, Georgia Serves, and the Department of Community Affairs. And they will have certain criteria in that agreement that you must adhere to for this grant. We will need to know who will sign that grant agreement, so you will be contacted asking for email addresses of those people who will sign the grant agreement, because we will need those email addresses because it'll be sent out using Adobe Pro, and Adobe will need those email addresses so it can go straight to the signatory for that. So those are just some things to be on the lookout for. Other specifics that you need to be aware of. Late applications will not be accepted. You may hear me reiterate that several times. First-time new applicants must apply for a minimum of 5, a maximum of 10 MSY. No program should plan to start before September 1st, 2026. All new programs must place the word AmeriCorps in the descriptive title of the applicant's project in Section 11A of the face sheet. All Georgia Serves Planning Grant applicants must have the words AmeriCorps Georgia Planning Grant in the descriptive title of the applicant's project in Section 11A. For example, you might say ABC Nonprofit Organization AmeriCorps Planning Grant. Okay. Planning grants may be awarded up to $75,000. It does not have to be exactly $75,000. It can be less than $75,000. So be realistic when you're preparing your budget. You can use these planning grant funds up to 12 months, but you're not required to. For example, if you apply for a planning grant and for now, and then you want to apply for a full AmeriCorps program in 2027, that will give you only approximately 6 months to plan. And we'll work with you during that time to try to get you ready for the full AmeriCorps grant application. But if you want to plan for 12 months, you're certainly more than welcome to do that. And AmeriCorps planning grants, again, does not support AmeriCorps members. All applicants must use their SAM registered name as their legal name on the face sheet in Section 5 throughout the life of this grant. And I say that because these are typically 3-year grant periods, but each year you must reapply. So that's kind of misleading to some folks. The first year you will complete the full application to apply if you are funded, and then the second year and the third year you will just complete continuation applications, which is much shorter than the full application. But we'll walk you through that once you get to that point. So here I want to explain to you what cost per MSY is and how much it is per member. The cost per MSY is the amount that you may request per full-time member, and this year it is $25,000. It typically changes every year. A full-time member is a member serving at least 1,700 hours per year. You may pay a full-time member at least $20,400 per year. However, you may request $25,000 per MSY. So, example, if you are requesting 10 full-time members at $25,000 per member, your application request would be for $250,000. That would be your budget. You will note the difference between the $25,000 cost per MSY and the $20,400, which was the living allowance which is the minimum living allowance for a full-time member. The difference is $4,600, and you may use that difference for member-related costs. such as member service gear or health insurance or member travel, but it has to be member related. We encourage people who are totally new to AmeriCorps to not request more than 10 MSY or no less than 5 MSY. And those MSYs can be any combination of full-time, three-quarter time, half-time, quarter-time, or minimum time. So for example, if you're requesting all half-time members and you're requesting 5 MSY, then that would equate to 10 half-time members, right? If you're requesting 10 MSY and you're requesting half-time, then that would be 20 half-time, and so forth and so on. So it is totally up to you to determine the number of members that you need and the status of those member slots that fit your project design. That is 100% your decision. You may choose from full-time, three-quarter time, half-time, quarter-time, or minimum time. And of course, the living allowance varies, is prorated based on less than full-time. All right? Again, planning grants have no members and therefore no cost per MSY and no living allowances. So this chart shows required match based on the number of years that you've received AmeriCorps funds. It is 24% for the first 3 years, and then it gradually increases and maximizes out at 30% in year 10. You're only required to meet the required match. If your budget shows greater than the required match, then you will be held to that higher match and will be considered non-compliant if you fail to meet the higher match. So I guess what I'm saying to you is that it is much safer to stick to the required match, but again, that is totally your decision. While I'm thinking about it, there are some tutorials and webinars that AmeriCorps provides for applicants, especially new applicants, but for any applicant, and I will provide that link to you at the end of this. It'll be in the last slide of this presentation. By the way, the required match for planning grants is 24%. Some of you may know about fixed grants. We're not talking about fixed grants in this presentation, but just in case you're wondering, there is no match for fixed grants, okay? But new applicants are not allowed to apply for fixed grants. So now we're going to talk about funding priorities. So this slide shows funding priorities for faith-based organizations, organizations that serve communities, organizations that benefit AmeriCorps members, and those that use evidence in their projects. Priorities to organizations serving communities include those communities that are rural, tribal communities, and impoverished communities. So also, just read all of these points for your funding priorities. If you implement programs for or expand access to high-quality youth mental health and substance use recovery services and prepare AmeriCorps members to enter behavioral health careers, that's a priority. All right. These may include individuals who have experienced substance use and mental health challenges. A third point, focus on improving quality of life for veterans, active duty members of the armed forces, and their families through models that provide effective interventions or services or that are designed to recruit veterans, military spouses, and their older children into national service. For example, veterans serving in mentorship roles. Another priority is a focus on public safety, crime prevention, and/or partnerships between law enforcement and the community. Another one, focus on expanding outdoor recreation opportunities for future generations by maintaining public lands, supporting wildland fire mitigation, and sustainable forest management, and providing reforestation services. Another priority, create workforce pathways for AmeriCorps members, including deliberate training such as pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship opportunities, certifications, and hiring preferences or support. Under serving communities, lastly, focus on strengthening families. For example, activities that aim to support low-income parents through parenting education, responsible parenting, and healthy relationship skills. There are also two priorities under benefiting AmeriCorps members. Enhanced member experience by providing opportunities for skill attainment, personal growth, and connection to the community they are serving in support of a lifetime of civic participation. A second one, enhance and expand services to formerly incarcerated and at-risk youth and/or engage those youth as AmeriCorps members. Funding priorities for those that use evidence. Utilize reports from the AmeriCorps Evidence Exchange on programs assessed as having moderate or strong evidence to scale, replicate, or adapt the intervention. Also note that the full notice of funding opportunity will be published on our website, so you can go there to read the full notice of funding opportunity along with all of the funding priorities and more information for you. This is a copy of the face sheet that it will be included with your application. It's going to be populated as you complete your application, but I just wanted to point out a few things to you. Up here, we're going to use this contact information if we need to contact you. So the telephone number you use, the email address you use, make sure that that those are contacts to people that we can reach in case we have questions about your application. Over here, use the legal name of your organization. Whatever the legal name is as registered with DONS under your UEI, use that. Down here under 11A, you can use a descriptive title, and that's where we want you to include the word AmeriCorps in your descriptive title because it helps us with branding. Okay? For example, ABC AmeriCorps program. It doesn't have to be too elaborate. If you are applying for a planning grant, you can say ABC AmeriCorps planning grant, for example. All right? Under here, proposed project time, start and end date. No projects will be able to start before September 1st. This says 2024, but obviously it should be 2026, right? So it can go for 10, 11, or 12 months. So if you want to go for 12 months, you would just simply count 12 months from September 1st, or 10 months from September 1st, or 11 months from September 1st would be your end date. All right? Here, a lot of you are going to be new, so you would just check that new box. If you receive funds from us and you are in your second or third year, you're going to check continuation. If you are in your fourth year and you're starting as a recompete, then you're going to check new previous grantee. Okay? Everything else on here should be self-explanatory. I told you earlier to make sure that you have your, I believe that I told you to have your EIN number, but that's the number that is inside your organization. You're going to have to get that from your employer. Your EIN number and your UEI numbers will come from your employers. Use your legal address as well. Any questions on this form, you have my email address at the end, and you can email any questions that you may have. So now I'm going to start talking about completing the application itself. Now, the first thing you're going to see is the executive summary worth 0 points, right? But just because it's 0 points doesn't mean that you can ignore it. This is where all you do is fill in a template. It's fill in the blanks. We want you to use these templates. You'll note that the template is different for the operations grants and the planning grants. Use the respective template. Fill in the blanks. If you don't use the fill in the blank template, we will subtract points. The reviewer may subtract points at their discretion. Okay, they may subtract 1 point, 2 points, whatever they deem necessary. So please save yourself some loss of points and use this fill in the blank template. The program design is worth 50% of your total 100%. All right. So be sure to address each section of this application. Don't skip any points, because you can see I gave you the amount of points that each section is worth. So you can see if you skip points, that's going to be detrimental. Any application scoring less than 70, we're not going to even consider. So these points are very important. Losing 20 points, 10 points, whatever. These points, you may not get 20 points for, say, example, for the community and logic model. This is up to 20 points. The reviewer may score it less than 20 points, but it can be up to 20 points. Evidence tier up to 12 points. Evidence quality up to 8 points. Notice priority up to 4 points. You get it, so forth and so on. On planning grants, this is a lot of points. Community and logic model is up to 24 points. The process timeline is up to 26 points. So I did this side by side so you can see at a glance what you need to complete for, depending on the type of grant that you're applying for. Now this is the logic model, and this is what it's going to look like in eGrants. And I tried to give a description here to help you to complete this. I don't want to be misleading, but this first section, it says problem. I want you to provide a detailed summary of the community problem, including how will they solve the problem, all right? What inputs are going to be needed to solve the problem, and what are the outputs? You're going to talk about all of that in this column. Even though you'll see columns over here specific to inputs and outputs, you're still going to talk about, this is going to be the narrative, talking about what inputs you're going to need, what outputs you're going to need, what is the problem itself, and what are you going to do about it? How are you going to affect this problem in a positive way? What are you going to need? What are your, you can talk about your outcomes also, short-term, intermediate, long-term outcomes. What are you hoping to change? Talk about all of that under your problem. Be detailed, okay? You get up to, I believe, 8 pages for your logic model. So you have plenty of space, hopefully, to talk about your logic model over here. Inputs, in this column, you're simply going to list all of your inputs. This is going to be a list, right? This is not a narrative in this column. This is going to be a list. What do you need? You need AmeriCorps members. You need X number of dollars. You need space. You need a building. You need a room. You need AmeriCorps members who have what specific knowledge. Do you need volunteers? Do they have to have any specific knowledge, skills, or abilities? This is going to be a list of all of the inputs, all of the things that you need to go into this recipe to make this a success. You're baking a cake here, right? What do you need in this cake to make it a good cake? You need flour. You're not talking about how much flour. You just need flour. You need baking powder. You need salt. You need sugar. You need flavor. You need eggs. Look at this as a recipe. Activities. Now here you describe your activities. You talk about those core activities that you need these AmeriCorps members to perform in these different centers that you mentioned. What do you need them to do? How often do you need them to do it? Okay, so in this column under activities, think about this as a dosage of medicine. Or you can use the analogy of baking a cake too, but you need to talk about how much, the frequency. If this is a tutoring program and they're tutoring children, how often are they going to tutor these children? How many children are they going to tutor? How many times a week? How many times a day? For how many hours? Just give us all of that information. And then outputs. How many kids are you expecting to participate in this? How many people are going to benefit from this? Are you expecting 30 students to attend? 20 students? What are your outputs? right? And then outcomes is what's going to change. Are there, so in this first column, the short-term outcomes, are there going to be any changes in knowledge or skills or attitudes? Are kids changing their attitudes about homework assignments? Are they feeling better about it? Are they being more assured? What can you measure here? Then the midterm outcomes, are there changes in any behaviors or changes in any actions? Maybe kids are not being bullies anymore. Maybe their school attendance has changed. Maybe they're going to class with a different attitude now. There's not as much absenteeism. And then long-term outcomes, are they at a totally different reading level? Have they increased one grade or more in their reading skills or in their math skills? And I'm just using tutoring as an example. I'm not saying that you have to be a tutoring program. That's just an easy example for me. So just think about your short-term, mid-term, and long-term outcomes, and that's what each one of these columns are for. Okay? Evidence tier, 12 points. So each applicant will receive an evidence tier assessment by the reviewer. This is based on the relative strength of the applicant's evidence base and the likelihood that the proposed intervention will lead to the outcomes identified in the logic model narrative. Now you can go to that NOFO that I told you about that's on our website, and I just snipped some of that information and put it down here for you, but you can read more in more detail about the evidence, whether it's pre-preliminary, preliminary, strong, moderate, or strong. And it doesn't have to fall into either one of these it has to fall into one of these categories, but you're not going to get any more points if it falls into a higher category. So I don't want you to stress if your evidence is not strong. If it's pre-preliminary or preliminary, that is absolutely perfectly fine. It's still going to be up to 12 points for this tier based on whether or not the reader thinks that, that they're going to look at, does it really, is this evidence, is it supporting what you're trying to do? Okay? Is it supporting your proposed intervention? That's what they're looking for. You can tell us whether or not you feel that it's preliminary, moderate, strong, or pre-preliminary. You can tell us that in your narrative. Okay? Planning grants, you don't need to worry about evidence at this point. You'll worry about that in the future when you get ready to apply for a full AmeriCorps grant. Evidence quality. Again, does it support your intervention? We're going to look at the quality of it. If you're looking at strong or moderate evidence, you can submit your evidence as those documents that you're going to send to us via email. Okay. If you don't have evidence, then just say you don't have evidence. If you're going based on a project that another organization had and you feel that it worked, talk about that. If you have something to support that, send us that. Okay. If you did this yourself in-house and you only have did in-house surveys yourself, tell us that you did. It's perfectly fine. Just make sure that the quality of your evidence supports what you're trying to do. Okay? Whatever evaluations or surveys or anything that you've done, talk about that and send it to us. Notice priority. This is pretty simple. Earlier I listed for you the notice priorities. We talked about them in some detail, and just as a recap, I've listed them down here for you. Simply tell us which one of these priorities you fall within. That's pretty easy. It doesn't have to be a long paragraph. It can be just a few sentences. Okay? Member experience. AmeriCorps wants to make sure that members have a good experience. So here is where you will describe how AmeriCorps members will be provided opportunities for skill attainment, personal growth and connection, connection to the community, and how they're serving in support of a lifetime of civic participation. How talk about talk about the experience that you foresee these AmeriCorps members having, the experience you want them to have. You want them to have a great experience. So elaborate on that. Um, your for planning grantees. Now you would talk about you're not talking about members because you don't have members, but you will talk about your perceived members. But you will also talk here about your timeline. Does the applicant describe a clear and logical planning process, including a detailed description of the planning process and who is leading it? Talk about who is leading it, why they are qualified to lead it, what they're going to be doing. We want to see a well-developed timeline. In your start date would be maybe September. If you start, what are you going to do in September? You know, how are you going to get started? Or do you need to do some surveys? Do you need to form some committees? Do you need to meet with those committees? What is it that you need to do to make sure that this planning grant works and that you're in a good position for a full AmeriCorps program next year or whenever you decide that you want to apply? Okay. Give a clear description of the planning period and how it's going to be used to develop the necessary components to effectively manage an AmeriCorps program in the future. Now, planning grantees, we as staff, and I'm not staff, I'm a consultant, but we're going to work with you during the planning grant period to help you be in really good shape for a full AmeriCorps program. But we still want to hear from you about your intentions for this planning grant and what you plan to do with it. How do you plan to use it to be in a position to apply for a full AmeriCorps program? Okay. Organizational capability is worth 25%. Here you talk about organizational background and staffing and member supervision. Now, and this is the same for both operational grants and planning grants. Now, I know planning grants, you don't have AmeriCorps members, but you will talk about how you foresee supervising AmeriCorps members, how you're going to put a person in a position to supervise these members, and how that person is going to be qualified to supervise the members, and how you know they're going to be qualified, and how you're going to make sure that they're going to be qualified. And both of you are going to talk about your organizational background and staffing. So let me just go to that slide so we can go into more detail. So organizational background and staffing, describe the roles, responsibilities, the structure of the staff that's going to implement and provide oversight of the program, including but not limited to demonstrating the organization has sufficient policies and procedures in place and controls to effectively implement a federal grant. So you want to talk about all of that. You want to talk about the people that you're going to have on this grant budget, their titles, their roles, and their responsibilities. Okay? And be consistent when you talk about their titles and then you build your budget. Use the same titles on the budget so that they match up. Okay? And that's the same for same thing for planning grants as well. Member supervision. Describe how AmeriCorps members will receive sufficient guidance and support from their supervisor to provide effective service. Now, in order for the supervisor to be able to supervise AmeriCorps members, then that stands to reason that that supervisor would have to have some knowledge about AmeriCorps rules and regulations, right? So how are you going to assure that supervisor has that information about AmeriCorps rules, regulations, prohibited activities? Those are the things that you want to talk about here in this grant application, all right? You may include, not limited to, structure for member supervision, cadence and format of supervisor and member check-ins. We have one program that have regular member check-ins. The members even have, meetups and things like that, and they get along very well with each other. So just talk about how you're going to make sure that the members have opportunities for growth and how they're going to grow, and how you're going to provide member training for these folks. And planning grants, talk about how you plan to do that. Cost effectiveness and budget adequacy. Okay, so for operational grants, you're going to talk about member recruitment, 5 points, member retention, 5 points, data collection, 5 points, and then budget adequacy, 10 points. Planning grants, you're going to talk about, well, we want to make sure that you put those NSCHC checks on your budget. And I know that AmeriCorps say that they don't require planning grants to do national criminal history checks for their staff, but we do. So any staff that you have on the budget, you're going to have to do a national service criminal history check on them. All right. Same thing for operational grants. If you put them on the budget, they'll have to undergo an NSCHC check if they're on that budget, right? You might want to budget up to $54 per person for those folks. And you can put it on the federal side if you want to. That's up to you. If you want to put it on the grantee side, that's up to you as well. But you must budget for it. Operation grants, you must also budget for AmeriCorps members to undergo the NSCHC checks. All right. Data collection for planning grants is 10 points, and budget adequacy is 10 points. Now, I put this note down here because we do not want you to budget for any AmeriCorps gear or AmeriCorps signage. We don't want you buying those things for branding until you know that you're going to be funded as a full AmeriCorps program. Okay, so the planning grant, do not budget for those things. But you do need to put your planning grant staff that's affiliated with this AmeriCorps program. If they're on that budget, you will need to do the NSCHC check on them. Okay? So, member recruitment. Provide a description of the budget expenses that's going to support member recruitment. And that's only for operations grants, okay? Not applicable to planning grants. Only for the operation grants. Member retention. Provide description of budget expenses to support retention of AmeriCorps members. For example, are there going to be additional member benefits that you're going to use as carrots to retain your members? Are you paying them above the minimum living allowance? I'm not saying that you have to, but that's just a question, just some ideas. Are you supporting them through workforce pathways? Are you giving them opportunities to obtain any special certifications, or are you coaching for the members? Are you doing resume building? What extra stuff are you doing to retain your members? It could be something as simple as member recognition, or just some simple member gatherings or get-togethers. Just talk about what you're going to do for that. Not applicable to planning grants. Data collection. Both planning grants and operations grants provide a description of budget expenses that support data collection and evaluation. Some of you may already have a data collection system in place. You may already have that software in place. If so, that is great. Talk about it, okay? Describe it to us. If there is a budget implication, include it on your budget. Budget adequacy. Please check your math. Please check your math. Check and double check it. The budget must be sufficient to support the AmeriCorps program, okay? The proposed budget should be sufficient to allow you to perform the tasks described in the narrative. All amounts requested must be defined for a particular purpose. You cannot use terms like miscellaneous. Do not want to see that. Itemize each cost and present the basis for all calculations. Even if you think we know the calculations, show them to us. Do not include any unallowable expenses. You cannot include any alcoholic beverages. Typically not entertainment unless it's pertinent to your program. Don't include fractional amounts. So if the cents are 50 cents or above, round up. If it's less, then round down. Add costs associated with National Service criminal history checks to your budget as well. So that is really important. Don't forget that. And we do, if I didn't tell you already, we do require that you use TrueScreen. Even if you have an in-house system where you do criminal history checks, we're still going to require that you use TrueScreen. Okay? So go ahead and budget for it. So criminal history checks, planning grants, although I talked about this already, but you must include criminal history checks. Operations grants, it's going to be in your budget. It is required. This particular section, I'm not giving you 5 points for it, but you must have criminal history checks on your grants for both staff that's on the budget as well as AmeriCorps members. Planning grants, any staff that's on the budget, you must budget for criminal history checks. Just some reminders here. Applications cannot exceed 11 double-spaced pages. These are the sections that go toward the narrative. The cost for MSY is $25,000. The minimum living allowance for full-time members is $20,400. Did the applicant budget for correct match amounts? 24% for the first 3 years, 26% for years 4, 5, and 6, 28% for years 7, 8, and 9, and 30% for years 10 and beyond. Again, if you exceed the required match, we're going to hold you to it. So just be cognitive of that, okay? Logic model may not exceed 8 pages when printed with the application from the review tab in AmeriCorps web-based management system. If it exceeds 8 pages or you have trouble with it in eGrants, you may use it as an additional document. And you were advised to use all caps for headings for ease of reviewing. We want to make things as easy for the reviewers as we possibly can because they're doing this totally as volunteers. They're not being paid for this, but their scoring does count. So you don't want to put them in any necessary positions where they have to take away points from you for any reason. So please be cognitive of the reviewers and use all caps to separate the sections of your application. Planning grant applicants, just a reminder, must have the words AmeriCorps Georgia Planning Grant in the descriptive title in section 11A on that face sheet. Match is 24% for planning grantees. A well-developed planning timeline for all planning activities and who's leading those activities is required. List all expected accomplishments of this planning grant and incorporate those into the timeline. Have an anticipated start date and end date. A clear description of how the planning period will be used to develop the necessary components to effectively manage an AmeriCorps program in the future. Consider if any surveys or evaluations need to be conducted and incorporate those into your timeline as well. Consider whether any consultants or other staff will be hired and incorporate those into your timeline as well as into your budget. And explain their significance to the AmeriCorps Planning Grant. Again, planning grants may not be used to support AmeriCorps members, and planning grantees are not allowed to purchase AmeriCorps branded products. That will come later if you are successful as a planning grant, and then if you are successful as an AmeriCorps program applicant. Here's a side-by-side comparison of the requirements and the scoring, just for your convenience. So planning grants, you can see what's required for you guys, and then formula or operational grants, you can see what's required for you, as well as the side-by-side scoring. Any questions that you may have, please send those questions to AmeriCorpsGA@dca.ga.gov. Georgia NOFO recordings, there will be additional recordings, and they will be posted on our Georgia Serves website. And we will hold office hours on February 5th, 12th, 19th, and 26th from 11 to 12 Eastern Standard Time. And this is the link for joining those webinars, those office hours. You can we're just going to be open for any questions that you may have. If you don't want to join us for office hours, or if that's not convenient, you can always contact us using that email address as well. Here is the link as promised for the webinars or the recordings that AmeriCorps held. Those should be, I would really encourage you all to check those out, as they will be very helpful to you. You'll find tutorials and webinars on the budget, on performance measures, and the application itself in general, and will probably answer a lot of questions for you. Again, I wish you the best of luck. If you need any help or assistance, please feel free to contact us. And thank you for your attention.